Welcome to Do the Talk podcast. It is your real estate podcast that teaches regular people how to invest in real estate. If you would like to learn and grow with us, you have come to the right place. We've always been saying this real estate, it is not get rich quick scheme. You have to put in the work, and believe me, things will fall in line. Just keep watching Do the Talk and, you know, practice what you've learned here, and, um, things will work out. My name is Ibrahim. I am your host, and my co-host tonight is Hammed Lawal. Today we have a special edition. Ahmed, how are you doing today?
Ibrahim, it's been a great day so far, but I'm very happy because today we have a very great guest with us. It's gonna be, uh, helping us throughout the podcast today. And if you are watching right now, thank you for joining. First of all, but you want to stick around because we only have few days into 2024, and a lot of what we're gonna be discussing is gonna be tying into what we think real estate market will look like. So if you're looking to jump into real estate, you want to take your pen and paper and glue to your screen to the end so that you can learn all the way to the end. But without further delay, the guest that we have today is someone that is very interesting individual in my opinion. Someone
Knowledgeable.
that's very knowledgeable and do something different even from real estate. So this is a person that he is a personal trainer and the owner of iRock Physical Therapy. He is the owner of TC Home. He is an entrepreneur generally. He invests here in Indiana, in Kentucky, Texas. He is an all-round man. So the person I'm talking about is Kurt Bonner. How you doing, Kurt?
Hey everybody, nice
Hey,
to meet
Cord.
you. How's it going?
Going
Good,
well.
good, good.
How are you?
Welcome.
I'm glad to be here. Excited. Thanks for asking me to come and hang out with you guys for a little bit.
Thank you.
Yes. Hey, Kurt. My first question will be, who is Kurt Bonner?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always give the fun speech first. Definitely a husband and a father first, and then the part that everybody always expects after that is a real estate investor. The third part for me, and I am also a business owner for a physical therapy clinic for physical therapy and personal training and massage. And so that is kind of my 9 to 5, if you will. And then, as I say, PT by day, real estate investor by night. Um, and then so I've been running that clinic for about this specific one for about 6 months. Really progressing that forward, and we're over in Avon, Indiana, so really familiar with the market over here. And then again, just as we all know, falling in love more and more with that indie market every day.
That's great.
Absolutely, absolutely great. So you mentioned physical therapy,
Mhm.
Kurt, and for our audience, they will be like, how does that tie into real estate? So can you kind of bring us back a little bit to what entice you and when do you even start real estate investing?
Yeah, so I actually started about 3.5 years ago. I had graduated from PT school few years prior to that, and I was just working kind of the 9 to 5, and I realized like I love what I do as a physical therapist, but I felt like there was more out there. And everybody I knew that was doing really well for themselves owned real estate. The book that everybody always ends up talking about is Rich Dad Poor Dad, and sure enough, I found that bad boy, and I read it in a day. And again, that changed a lot of my perception in general. Um, from that there, I went down a rabbit hole and started chasing after anything that I could get my hands on just to learn more and more. So I read Avery Carl's Short Term Stay, Long Term Wealth. I read the 30-Day Stay book for medium term rentals, and you name it. So, and then there's a couple other books that I'm really passionate about with Start With Why by Simon Sinek. I think those are books that a lot of times get overlooked. But you think about what real estate is. A lot of people, kind of, as you said earlier, Ibrahim, a lot of people come into it like, oh man, I want to make money really quick, right? And real estate is not that way. You can make really good money in real estate, but you got to set up systems. You got to really decide what it's going to be like. And when you have those terrible days and everything goes wrong, which I can tell a story about that here in a little bit if you guys want me to, um, you got to be able to say what your why is and why you're passionate about, what your purpose is going forward. Because if you can't, man, real estate's really tough.
Yeah.
You have to grind. And again, people are always like, yeah, I just want that passive income. And unfortunately, that's not necessarily how it works. There are ways that you can do that. And I can kind of explain how we help people do that later on as well. But for the most part, if you want to get into real estate and really learn what it is and what people are doing and why people actually get more and more passionate about it, you got to be ready to grind. And that's just how it is. So I read a few books and I listened to every podcast under the sun. Fell in love with Bigger Pockets, listened to all of that stuff. Started following a guy by the name of Rob Abasolo, also known as Rob Built, on YouTube. And then I just got plugged in. So I'm with his crew and I am a host camper with Rob Abasolo. So we focus kind of the short-term rental game, but medium terms as well. And then kind of what progressed me into my next model where I'm with my current business partner is going into co-living. So again, we could talk about that a little bit later as well. But I started diving in a little bit. We bought our first property a little over a year and a few months back. And it was an A-frame cabin in the woods in Kentucky. And again, I live in Indianapolis. I told myself that if I bought it from far away, I wouldn't go do all the work myself, which was a good thing. It forced me to have to build systems so that everything was in place, that if something needed to get taken care of, I didn't have to be there. And so that was really good, but I still self-manage, which is a really, really cool thing. And I encourage it for a lot of people. It just takes a lot of work up front to set everything up appropriately. But I got into that and we've been going for over a year. We've been doing really well. Like I said, learning every day. In that time frame, I've partnered with several other people and kind of progressed and still growing and learning.
Very interesting. That's very interesting. So my first question for you is, when you make the attempt to get the house in, when you attempted to get the house in Kentucky, was there any kind of fear of like, do you have to move there and stay there? How can you get contractors? How
Yeah.
can you navigate in the Kentucky business and make sure your property is getting occupied and maintenance and everything?
Mhm.
Weren't you scared about somebody calling in the middle of the night from Indy and you got to go to Kentucky and stuff?
That's a fantastic question because absolutely. Now, I will say, because I'm married, there was no way that my wife was about to move down to Kentucky. She was like, "We're staying in Indy, bud. So you better lock up and we better make this work." So that was motivation in itself. Um, so the way it ended up working is, and Rob Abasolo talks about this all the time, is when you're investing away from where you're at, or even if you are doing it where you're at. So when I do properties in Indy, I do the exact same thing. I don't want to be working directly in the business unless it's management side, because that's what I'm good at. And that way I can do what we call the big money ticket items, right? I can go find more properties. I can go talk to other investors, right? That stuff is more valuable to me because that's what I'm really good at. And so I want to hire what we refer to as the Airbnb Avengers, right? You want to have your number one, your most important person on your team is your cleaner. I went through 10 of them. And there was a lot of interviewing and I had a couple of them ghost me. Um, so it was just a lot of feedback. And then again, it was we set it up to where we essentially cleaned exactly how we wanted it, and then we wrote it out on a piece of paper. I'm a big fan of, from a business side, and again, this is where my physical therapy background comes in handy, is setting up your systems. It's so important. So we set up a standard operating procedure for any of our cleaners. So when they walk in the property, they know exactly what's expected, and they have pictures to follow too. So they don't have to worry about like, oh, well, maybe I do it. And again, if they do it a slightly different way, as long as those pictures look the same, that's okay, as long as the property's clean, right? And they do a good job, right? And we get great feedback from our guests with that too. So the cleaner is the number one person. They're your eyes and ears for everything. Even when we have medium-term rental folks in there, we have our cleaners go in. So our last one, he was there for almost 3 months, and we had our cleaner just go in once a month and just check on the place, do a thorough cleaning still, take care of some stuff, replenish the coffee and some of the laundry detergent and that stuff, just to kind of help everything out. And she was able to clean, take care of some stuff, notify me that there were some issues that needed to be addressed. So then I was able to go to my next Avenger, which is my maintenance person. And again, those are the people that I'll say those are the main two you want to take care of, right? Because the second one being your maintenance person, something goes wrong in your property, you want to be able to have somebody to call. And yes, I am not about to drive down to Kentucky to fix a toilet. The very first guest that I had stay at my property literally said that she sat on the toilet and then the ring broke, the wax ring underneath the toilet. I mean, I was like, everything was fine when we left it. And then it was the very first guest. And again, I called the maintenance guy. Now, actually a really cool story behind this. And this is super important for anybody that's investing, especially whether it's, I mean, honestly, it's anywhere, but especially when you're investing out of state or further away. When you are hiring your cleaners and your maintenance people, pest control, all of those folks, it is really, really, really important to make sure that you take care of them, right? In my first property where I invested, it was during Christmas time, and I sent them gift cards and just said, hey, I know you haven't worked on our property yet, but we're so grateful and excited to do this journey with you. And literally that next week we had all kinds of issues. And I'll tell you this, again, it wasn't necessarily an expectation to be at the top of their list, but because they saw that we valued them already, without them having to do anything, we went to the top of their list when stuff went wrong. And they jumped on it. Just for instance, we had during that polar vortex last year, there was a crew that came in and they turned on all the water full blast, and they didn't know how to read, which was something I never expected to have to prepare for. I guess as a host, but again, you learn, you live and you learn. In turn, they ended up busting several pipes, and then they flooded half of the cabin. So there was a ton of stuff. And again, these were our second guests. The first guest, again, a toilet broke. So second guest, so it was right out the gate, learning stuff. But my cleaner was so diligent that she went out there right away and was checking, and she calls me immediately and goes, hey, the house is flooded right now. And I'm like, that's awesome. She was like, we'll take care. We got everything off. So they shut the water lines off. And she went above and beyond, because then she started calling people. And I called my maintenance guy right away. And he was like, yeah, I'll come out right away. He's like, you're one of the 25 on my list right now, but I'll come out right now. And I truly believe that was because we noticed him and we took care of him. And he did some work for us before that as well. That really helped that. And I had that conversation. I was like, hey, are you okay with me paying you little bits kind of deal when to come fix stuff? I said, you tell me what the price is and I'll pay it. Right. And with that, we built that relationship. And I think so many of us as real estate investors, we get a little stingy sometimes. And we're like, oh, no, man, I don't want to spend that money. I can go do that myself. But at the end of the day, again, think about what goes on with what we do as investors. if you're doing other things, again, you're not going to get to the big ticket items. So that is the importance of making sure that we invest in those people to help us be able to grow it. Again, whether it's in your backyard or whether it's home and far away, it doesn't matter. You got to set those people up, and that's how you run it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that experience with us. I always, tell people don't give away the good things you do. We all know we are good people,
Mhm.
but when people thank me, I always tell them, "Oh, if you are in my shoe, you will do the same."
Yeah,
That's to remind them that if I need your help, I want you to come through.
yeah,
So don't give your so the love reciprocity is real,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
You are not doing it for them to repay you, but you still want people to, because you will need them at some point.
Yeah,
When
Yeah.
you are describing this in my head, I'm saying, "Oops, oh God, what?" So can you talk real quick, talk us through what was going through your mind, and how can you be so calm even knowing that big things like that is happening somewhere that you can't really I mean, you can go there within 2 hours, but you,
mhm.
you can't leave every other thing behind and
Yeah.
just drive down to Kentucky. What was going through your mind?
You know, honestly, for this particular property, again, I was actually glad that I was 4 hours away because I know that if it was here specifically in Indy at that time when I first started investing, that I would have been freaking out. I would have been over there like trying to figure out what to do. Like I would have been panicking. And I don't know, maybe that could have been the end of my real estate career and journey, right? Because I would have been so frustrated. Um, I think part of it was I had to trust the systems, right? I knew going into this, and I'd heard this so many times, um, that at some point you just have to pull the trigger, right? Is we get analysis paralysis so much, right? And all of us sit there and we're like running properties. We're like, well, this one's kind of nice. I like this. This looks pretty cool. You know, I think I could do that, but I don't know if I'm ready yet. Let me read one more book. Let me listen to one more podcast, right? But sometimes what it takes is to actually get your hands dirty and figure it out. And again, I will say my physical therapy background has helped with that tremendously because being a PT, I mean, I have people coming in all the time and they're in pain. And that's what we deal with. Ibrahim, you were in nursing, right? So you've seen that world where when people are in pain, they're not in a great mood. They're right. They're hurting. And knowing that is there is always, always, always a way to solve anything that's thrown at us. Doesn't matter what happens. Always, there's always an answer, right? And kind of like what you were saying too, Ahmad, is when we are being diligent and caring for other people and showing that we care, things tend to work out. I'm a firm believer in that. All right. And again, I had done my due diligence with my cleaners and with my maintenance people, and I knew they were a rock star team. And so I trusted that they were going to be able to handle the situation diligently. And guess what? They absolutely did. They crushed it. They took care of the entire situation and pretty much just kept me updated as it went, right? And then like they sent me the bills to things as it was needed. And um, you know what? It was as smooth as it possibly could have gone for the entire situation. Were there definitely times where I was panicking a little bit, like, oh gosh, is this going to happen every week? Absolutely, and definitely in those moments. But again, I just kept reminding myself is these are the moments that define a real estate investor. Being able to get through this and move on to the next thing and saying, hey, let's keep going. You always hear when you talk to real estate investors, right? Specifically the ones that are no longer in it. Everybody always talks about that terrible experience they had. They're like, oh, those tenants always just screwed up my stuff and I always had to do stuff. If you ever talk to them, I always ask, I'm like, okay, so how much did you make when you sold the property? Right? And how much did that tenant pay down on your debt? Right? Oh, how much did you save on taxes by owning that real estate? Right? People forget that's a huge component of real estate. Like again, you got to find the metrics that work best for you. And I'm not a CPA, not an accountant. I'm not an attorney. There's my disclosure. But if you look at it from a tax benefit, right, you get so many benefits from owning a business. You get benefits from owning a real estate property. There's secondary benefits from owning a short-term rental. Like, you name it, there's so many benefits. So even if you break even, as long as you can maintain that and you're okay with that, there's still a lot of benefits that you actually gain with that. And there's a lot of cool metrics. And again, I advise people to go speak with a CPA about this stuff, because we're running a business. So your home becomes an office. You can actually write stuff off in your home for your utilities as an office, right? Which is actually really stinking cool. And again, it's all legal, right? And that's how we want it to be. And again, not a CPA, but those are things that I've talked with my CPAs about how to be diligent about when I'm preparing and using that stuff for my benefit as well, to help do it the right way. And so I'm a firm believer in that stuff. And again, knowing that when you set up your systems first, when you set up and pick the right team, you're always going to be taken care of in the back end. And unfortunately, things are going to happen. There are going to be days that are just absolutely terrible. And welcome to real estate is all I have to say to that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Court. What can you currently, the indie market, the way you look at it, I'm talking about the mid-term and short-term.
Mhm.
We all know the way Airbnb is going right now, the way things are and all that. There are some people, our audience, even our audience, they would like to know, is it still something they can jump into Airbnb, or what can you advise our audience tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I think, everybody talks about the recession, right? Coming up. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? I think the big thing to take note of, right? If you follow the metrics from everything that's gone on, anytime you're investing, think of it again, what is an investment, right? It is something that you're taking a risk on. And I think that's really important for people to know. Can you put all your money in something and lose that money? Absolutely. Real estate is that. Now, can you also structure your business and add systems? All right. And I've mentioned that word how many times now, where you lock it down so that you can at least stabilize, right? If hypothetically there is a recession, right? And I think those are the biggest points that we have to think about. Now, we are not in the same market that we were in 2021 or even 2018, right? 2018 was a booming market for the short-term world. Medium-term world was kind of starting to creep in a little bit. 2021, like, we closed down for 2020 a portion of the way. And so everybody was panicking, like, oh, Airbnb's done forever. It's never coming back. And then everybody's like, I got stuck at home. I'm going and traveling everywhere. Right. And then we had the craziest year from a short-term perspective that we've ever had. Right. And now you got to look at that. People are like, well, I want to do that, because people are literally just throwing up their couch on Airbnb and making crazy money on it. And that doesn't happen. All right. So that's gone. Right. People that are wanting to just throw something up and it be okay, that's gone. So if you want the easy route where you can just throw anything up and not put a diligent amount of time and work into it, that's not there anymore. I think the importance on design is super, super important right now, because so many people are doing a great job of designing their places. A tip that we always talk about is getting professional photos. That is like the number one thing that you can do, is get professional photos. If I go into a neighborhood and I'm seeing properties around me that don't have professional photos, I literally look at them and go, I can beat them. I can beat them. I can beat them. And again, not as like a bragging right, but it's literally, it's a low hanging fruit, right? So if people are interested, I think that's a great place to start. Is if you already know you're going to do it, one, make sure you have reserves. All right. That way, if something happens, you can kind of work it out. Right. And again, always have multiple exit strategies, right? You can always have, if you're planning on short-term rental, right? That's known as making the most amount of money, right? Number two would be your medium-term rental, right? You get, maybe you're traveling professionals, maybe you have traveling nurses, corporate executives, maybe you're doing insurance claims, anything along those lines. And then I mean, the third one that most people think of is long-term rental, right? I'm a firm believer that any property that you run, unless it's a very specific market for short-term rentals only, I truly believe that when you run your numbers, it should be able to run as a long-term. Because if it doesn't, if stuff doesn't work out, well, then you're in a bad spot. But if you always plan for it to have that potential, now you're in a good spot because, hey, short term doesn't work out. You paid for the furnishings. That's all you lost. All right. And you didn't even lose that because now you can literally throw that in storage and then pull it back out when you're ready to give it a shot again. Right. And then turn it into a long term rental and still do well. And guess what? You're still getting debt to pay down. You're still getting tax benefits. So you're still getting a lot of the benefits. Right. And then
Absolutely.
my favorite model right now is co living. So it's kind of a rent by the room model. Right. And essentially, you run it very similar to a short-term, medium-term model where you sign like a 3-month lease, and then you go week to week. And there's a big company called Pad Split that does this. And it's a really cool model because it's a nice hybrid. And here's the thing. In every market, and Indy's going to be a big, big important one in this, but in every market, prices are just keep going up, right? That tells you, in real estate's done that since I mean, you look at the history of real estate and it's always gone up, right? There will be those little incremental moments where it's coming down, but it's always going back up. So things are only going to get more expensive. So I love the co-living model for that reason, because again, my passion is to help as many people as possible. I want to get people in housing, and I want them to enjoy it while they're there. Part of my phrasing that I always like to say is we want to create a home to live in, not just a place to stay. Right. And when you do something along those lines, we want to create an atmosphere, an environment, an experience for these people. Right. And we're super passionate about that. So looking at all of those things together is you can kind of protect yourself when you have multiple exit strategies, you have a plenty amount of money in reserves. And again, if you're really not sure, go talk to people who are doing it. Right. I know I met both of you guys at our medium-term rental meetup, right, for Indy. And by doing that, again, here we are having this connection, having this talk, and helping more people learn about real estate.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott, for all these little gems that you're dropping. I know our audience are very appreciative right now because you've touched a lot of things right now, honestly. But I want to mention the past splits that you just mentioned.
Mhm.
So I've heard about them. I haven't looked into them. Really, can you walk us through how they work?
Yeah, so a pad split is like your operating agency, right? So it's an OTA, right? Just like Airbnb, but it's specifically for the co-living model. And again, you can run these essentially on Airbnb. We all know we've heard the stuff that's going on in the short-term rental world right now. When people think of short-term rental, who do they go to? They talk about Airbnb.
Airbnb.
Right. And again, great for Airbnb because they really set the standard of what that should look like. From our side, that makes it a little tough because if Airbnb goes out of business, well, guess what? If you don't have your business set up right, well, what are you going to do? Right. So I'm a firm believer too in like progressing your business to actually make it a business that doesn't rely on somebody else to be working for your business to work. And again, I get that because of my PT business. I can't rely on certain doctors to make referrals to my clinic, right? I have to go and make stuff happen. All right. And sometimes it works great. Sometimes it doesn't work great at all. Right. But at the end of the day, I know for me, if I get somebody in my clinic, they're going to stay because they're going to have a great experience. Right. I'm a firm believer in hospitality. So we want to keep that there. Co-living, that model is short-term rentals, but we're getting people who are maybe making a little bit less. So think about Indy, how many markets we have. We're actually one of the biggest providers for Amazon warehouses. I don't know how many people know that, but Indy's a huge market for Amazon warehouses, right? Those people are making anywhere from like $15 to $25 an hour, which isn't bad money, but they can't go buy a $400,000 house that's in Indy right now. Right. And we're actually considered a cheap market. So some of those folks are like, well, I'm either living at home or I'm splitting rent with somebody else anyways. So the co-living model, the way it works is essentially you're going into the property, I'm renting it to an individual at a time, and everybody has their own lease for the room. Okay. You want to do conversions of these properties. You don't have to. It just makes them a little bit more desirable. But you look at, so if you, let's say you have a 4-bedroom house, right, that you're looking at, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, right? The 4-bedroom, 2-bath house has enough space where you could add 2 more bedrooms, right? So what we're going to do is we would look to potentially take out the living room, right? Maybe if there's a dining room, we'd take that out and make those bedrooms. So now we can make that a 6-bedroom, 2-bath, right? The bathrooms become a shared space, right? And the kitchen becomes a shared space. Okay. So you rent by the room, and again, it depends on the market. It depends on like what kind of, and you furnish it. So it's similar to the medium-term, short-term rental model. You don't have to, but it's a good option. I like it. That's how I want to do it. And again, I want it to be a great stay for anybody that's staying with me in a co-living room, right? I want them to have a great experience because I want them to stay long-term, and I want them to enjoy themselves while they're there. So when we go into that model, the way it works then is I still have a cleaner coming in and cleaning those common areas on a regular basis, right? Every week, I may have a cleaner come in and clean up both the bathrooms and the kitchen, right? And then as people are rotating in and out, so like if I have somebody sign for a 3-month lease, they go to week, they stay for 4 months, and then they're like, hey, I'm moving to a different city, whatever, doesn't matter. They're like, hey, I'm out. They notify me, and then I have that room cleaned, and then I post it again to be vacant for somebody else to come stay and do the same thing. And what's cool about this model is you can make upwards, I'll say it ranges, right? I normally run numbers at $150 a room, right? So that comes out to about $600 a month per room. And I'm a physical therapist, so what you'll learn is I'm not good with math and on top of my head. 600 times, well, I guess that one is an easy one. So that's $3,600 if you have 6 rooms rented out, right? And that's the like kind of an average rent. But you think about that, $600 is really cheap for people, right? That's really affordable. But on our side, as the investors, we're getting people to come in, giving them a great experience, and then we're making good money on the other side, right? Because I don't know about you guys, but $3,600 would work for most places, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it will. Definitely. Definitely.
That's more than enough.
Yeah, right. So, and then you can take that model, and those people are actually staying a little bit longer than maybe you don't have as much turnover. You're just turning over one room at a time, which is also kind of nice. So, there's a lot of benefits to it, and so we're looking to just continue to grow that here in the indie market, and I'm really excited about that.
Absolutely.
That's a good one. So I want to ask you, this is very interesting to me. In this kind of model, do you have to like get city permit to kind of like change the rooms and everything to add more rooms in the same house? That way, when you're trying to sell it, you don't have issue with.
Oh yeah. Again, do your due diligence. Always do it. Yeah. So again, it depends on the city.
Mm-hmm.
But that's normally the stuff that you want to start with is always checking and seeing what permits are needed. When we go to a property that we're interested in for this, we take a contractor with us that knows the place really well. And again, I'm a physical therapist. I'm good with working on the body, right? I'm not good at working on furniture and walls and stuff. You don't want me doing that because you'll end up with holes in them, right? I leave the professionals to their game there. But here's the thing. Is if you get those right people, again, you're bringing them in, they can literally walk the house with you. And again, I'm a visionary, and my business partner is also a visionary for this stuff. And we're like talking out like, okay, we could put a room right here. We could put a room here if we do a wall here. And it's great because the contractor's like, nope, that's a violation. That's a code. And we're like, are you sure? Can't we make this work? Right. And he's over here like, nope, we're not doing that. And again, that's the importance of having those people on your team, right? Because you want those permits to make sure that it satisfies everything going forward. Because again, last thing you want to do is get into a property and then find out that you can't rent it out, right? Spend all this money. and then all of a sudden you're like planning on making $3,600 a month. You're like, oh, I'm cooking. We're going out to Fogo de Chao tonight, and then all of a sudden you get a no rental notice or something on your door saying, hey, or a call from the city saying, hey, by the way, we're pressing a lawsuit against you, right? We don't want that stuff. So do your due diligence. Always reach out. Get your permitting done appropriately. Get a contractor in there that knows what they're talking about, and make sure that they're a big part of that team, because that's so stinking important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that, that's really cool. I think I'm gonna, because I've heard about them for more than a year now, and
Mm-hmm.
for some reason I've been lazy about looking more into them and see how I can work with them. And this is a trend, right? I heard from I am a student of sub 2, so
Mm-hmm.
I've seen these guys that own pass
Yep.
split. Been on Zoom with them multiple times. But it's one thing about trend is, if you can jump on it early, you're gonna
Yeah.
make a lot of money. A lot of people have,
Mm-hmm.
established themselves on when Airbnb and short-term rentals started back in the day. So, what in indie with mid-term renting and short-term renting and bringing in co-living right now, what do you think 2024 is going to look like? Is it going to be a good year to invest for newbies, or is seasoned investor going to be the one that will, dominate? What do you think 2024 holds in the midterm and middle term and
Yeah.
space?
Yeah. I think I'm always a big fan of it's never too late. It's never too early to invest. But again, you want to get in the right groups, right connections to people, because if you go in by yourself, you're just, it's really hard one. It's lonely. It's not fun. And again, when you don't know what you don't know, you're going to just put yourself in a really bad situation. And I can say that because I've done that. Um, and it's really important, especially I think in 2024, it's going to be a really hard year. Um, I think there's a lot of potential because it's going to be a hard year. So just because it's a hard year does not mean it's not going to be an awesome year. We have some pretty hefty goals that we're planning on hitting this year, or well, this coming year, because there's a lot of opportunity out there. But it's because we're confident in our models and our systems that we've put in place to do what we're about to do. Again, people that are like nervous about investing, maybe there's a better way for you to do it. Maybe it's investing with somebody that's already been invested, right? Maybe it's making cold calls for people, right? You talk about the sub 2 community. There's always a need to find more deals, right? So we getting that stuff going, creative financing, man, I love it. My partner is a sub 2 student as well.
Oh yeah.
And she's a friggin' rock star. And but again, we're always like trying to find ways to get more people involved and to do more things. 2024 is going to be hard. If you, again, I said this earlier, if you go on and throw up something just on Airbnb, it's not going to, it may do okay, but you're going to get beat out. All right. And if there are any restrictions or regulations that change in Indy, which has been on the talk mode for a decent amount of times, you're going to get hit by that. And if you haven't planned for medium-term rental stuff, then you're going to get hit by that. Medium-term rentals work best when you build relationships, right? And we've had some other awesome folks who are doing a lot of medium-term rentals kind of join our Indy medium-term rental meetup. And with that, they're going out there and they're cold calling, all these insurance agencies and setting up different things with other groups. And that's so stinking important. Like I get opportunities with different deals sometimes just because I go to meetups and meet up with new people. And they're like, hey, you talked about short-term rentals and medium-term rentals. And that was cool. Like, hey, do you want to run something for me? Because I don't have any interest in doing it, but I see the value there. I'm like, sure, let's talk, right? I'm sure that's similar for you guys. When you go and meet people, again, it opens up opportunity. And here's the cool part. Something that may work for me may not work for you guys. Something that may work for you guys or may not work for you guys may work for me, right?
Absolutely.
And so knowing that stuff and having those connections, I know, hey, look, this won't work for me, but I can go talk to Hammed and Ibrahim and get you guys this deal, or vice versa, which is really cool. There's so many people that feel like they have to be crazy competitive too, right? And there's something to that, right? And so I got some people that probably be like, oh gosh, this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. If he's talking about don't be competitive. But at the same time, again, if our goal is to help as many people as possible, and we all at the end of the day, yeah, we want to make money, right?
Yep.
But if making money is your own goal, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
You look at some of the biggest companies in the world, right? One of my favorites is you look at Apple. They built who they are based on what they believe they could be and what they could bring to society. They never went in with the intention of, hey, I want to go into this to make just money, right? Steve Jobs, I think people kind of underrate him, and Bill Gates is another one of those with Microsoft. And it's kind of funny, if you look at when Microsoft did their worst, it's when Bill Gates stepped down and the other guy came, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, and he stepped into his place, and then he was like, we're going to make our profit or our shareholders rich, right? And then they fell apart because that wasn't what Bill Gates's dream was. His dream was to put a PC in every single person's home. And that meant he wanted to make it affordable for everybody to use a computer, which is an awesome dream, right? So again, that's where I go back to starting with the why is so important, right? Why are you actually doing what you're doing? There's another book called The Infinite Game, right? If you're competing with everybody else, well, eventually that means somebody's got to be a winner and somebody's going to be a loser. If you become the winner, somebody else lost. And guess what? That's not too far behind when somebody's going to beat you out. That's just how it works, right? Nobody can be on top forever. And with that said, if that happens and you made it that specific, you're going to go out and it's not going to work well for you. The goal is you want to stay in the game long term because that's how you generate wealth, right? That's how you build relationships. That's how you keep growing, right? So when we're talking about 2024, building connections is the best thing that you can absolutely do with other people in the real estate world, and also with the people that you want to rent to, right? Doing what you guys are doing, right? You're hosting a podcast, which is awesome, right? To teach people about what we do in real estate and why it's so cool, right? And helping people be in the know of what's actually happening. I mean, you look at Indy, and again, I'm bullish on Indy. I love Indy because we have a brand new hospital going up. It's a level 1 trauma hospital downtown Indy, and it's Methodist Hospital with IU Health. Phenomenal hospital. All right, I've actually worked there, and it's a great place. On the other side, you have Elevance, who's Blue Cross Blue Shield, that's coming to Indy, right? They're already here, but they're building a global headquarters in Indy, which is awesome, right? You have the Indy 11, who are building this huge facility, right? The big soccer field, and they're going to build a big complex around that. And people are like, oh, it's just the Indy 11. I don't think people realize we are one of the #1 cities in the United States of America that hosts high school and collegiate games. Let that sink in for a second. Indianapolis, we are one of the sports meccas in the United States just because we host high school and college, right? And guess what? If people are paying for their kids to be in a travel team in high school, they're bringing money with them. So they're going to want to find a nice place to stay. And again, you throw your couch up, it's probably not going to be the place that gets rented, right? They're going to want to stay in a place that's really well designed, and a lot of effort has an end with professional photos, right? Yeah. They're spending thousands of dollars for the kids to play in a league and thousands of dollars to travel everywhere. Well, they're going to pay thousands of dollars to stay in a nice place. You better believe it, right? So absolutely, those are super important things. And again, we're continuing to grow. We have, I know Eli Lilly is looking to expand up into Lebanon, right? Which is huge. Eli Lilly is the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, I think. Don't quote me on that one. But they're one of the top, right? And then again, look at Allisonville Transmission, one of the best providers for transmissions in the United States. And they're here in India as well, right? And I could keep going on with that list. There's so many awesome companies here, and more companies are coming because they see what Indy's having to offer, right? There's a reason our real estate market has gone up, and it's because people are starting to see Indy's a pretty stinking cool place. There's a lot of things to do. I mean, obviously, I'm a Colts fan through and through, so we bleed the blue here. And Pacers fan, like, we got several sports teams, and there's just so much to offer here in Indy, and I love it. So I think we're a great market, and there's a lot to be had in 2024. But you got to set those systems up and set yourself up for success.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you for that. So, if I can go over what you just you talked about,
Yeah.
Airbnb isn't like a terrible idea, but you have to be competitive. You have to put enough amenities. You have to connect with people and get your listing out there as much as possible. Like,
Yep.
you can list it everywhere if you have that chance. Just keep striving and keep connecting with people.
Mhm.
Go to seminars or like a link up where you can
Yep.
meet people, let people know what you're doing and all that. These are great ideas, but what people, you know, I don't have time. I don't have
Yeah.
time for that. How can I connect with people? And um, what where would you advise people to start? I mean, we know we have this daily, 9 to 5 or like 8 to 4 people go to, and by the time they got home, he or she already tired, and all that stuff. So before we wrap up, what do you think the little effort that people can put in daily or maybe every other day that will set them up for this goal? Like, maybe reach out to people, all that stuff. Can
Yeah.
you go ahead? Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think some of the big things that people can do and take action steps is learn about it, right? That's how I started. That's how most people have started to. And when you go above and beyond to learn, I think that's super, super helpful. If you're like, hey, you know what? I just don't have the time. Well, let's see what you do have. What are you good at? What are your resources? Maybe you have money, right? Well, maybe pair up with somebody who has time, right? And then go forward with there. I know both of us, right? Is we co-host, right? So maybe those people connect with us and say, "Hey, look, I got the money. We'll pay you to design and run the business, and then we'll just set or we'll pay for it, right? And you do your stuff, right? That's a great option, right? Call up Hammed and say, hey man, look, I really want to do this, but I'm not sure if I really got the time, right? Well, we're doing it already. So sometimes that's the easiest way to get in there. And guess what? Just by being in the same room as people who are already doing it, you're going to learn along the way. And guess what? Sometimes you look at that and you're like, maybe I do want to run it on my own, right? And so you can always look and again set up your systems, right? When you plan those out, sign contracts, do everything the right way, because then if you do decide to change your mind, be interactive and be upfront with people too. Like if somebody comes to me and says, hey, Kurt, look, I want to learn. I don't really have time, but I got the money and I want to set up a property. I'll be like, cool. All right, let me grab my team. Let's go find a property, whether we want to arbitrage or we want to go in and we want to buy a place, right? And I say, maybe we go 50-50, right? Maybe we go 75-25. It completely depends on the deal, right? But it depends on what people are willing to do outside of their comfort zone too, right? If you're not super trusting in yourself, okay, maybe that is reaching out to somebody who's already doing it and just ask, right? I love the model, and I do this all the time. And it's funny, my business partner kind of makes fun of me for this sometimes because she's like, you literally just go talk to anybody and like they're just ready to go. And you just, because I don't care if it's a negative interaction, because I'm going to treat them with love and care anyways, because that's just how I am. Right. So I will literally just reach out to people on Airbnb or VRBO, or you name it, and I'll just say, "Hey, I love your property. Would you be mind sharing anything with me?" Right? And most people are willing to do that. One, because we as humans, we like to brag a little bit. We're like, "Well, thank you for that compliment. Absolutely, I'll share you my deepest, darkest secrets about how I run this world." Right? And we love that. And here's the thing, we also like to teach. I love education. I love teaching. So when people come to me and ask questions, that's awesome, because when I teach it, that means I'm continuing to learn. And that also means I can give you things that maybe I've made a mistake on that you don't have to go and do the same thing. Right. And by doing that, again, we talked about this earlier, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we expect something back from those people. Guess what? If we teach somebody something and then they go on to do crazy things, guess what? Maybe down the road, They come back and say, "Hey, Kurt, you know what? You stepped up to the plate. You helped me into this. And you know what? I'm so grateful for that. Hey, I got money. I want to invest with you now." Right. Or, hey, I got this property. I found this great deal and I was thinking of you because, again, I was so grateful for what you did for me earlier in my life. Are you interested in this? Right. And again, that may be 40 years from the road down the road. It may never happen, but it can happen. Again, help people before you get helped. And then it'll come around eventually in one way, shape, or form. Because guess what? People are always watching too, right?
Absolutely.
Help the next person, somebody's watching that. Even if that person doesn't come back to you, somebody else is going to see that you helped that person, and it's going to come back. All right, trust me on that one, man. I'm a big fan of giving back in every way, shape, and form that we can, and it's important. So
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, and we really appreciate. So, one thing that I picked up why you are addressing the 2024 indie market is a lot of potential in
mhm.
indie. You just have to, like you said, connect with the right people that can, get you in the room of people that are actually doing this thing, talking about it, have some little secrets they can share. And
Mhm.
before you know it, you will be able to reach back down and help other people. I remember when I started like yesterday. So it's really important to connect, like we always say, connect with people that are doing it, that can actually get you up there. And if you call me, hey, I mean, what kind of mattress can I buy for my room? I'm
Uh-huh.
not going to charge you for that, right?
Right.
So it's just simple question. Get around people and ask the right question. So my final question, we still go back to 2024. If you are to, let's say, advise me, I'm starting up, like right now I'm just joining your mentorship and I'm going into 2024 energetic and ready to go, what would be the first strategy that you will ask me to consider?
First thing, I'm gonna tell you to read the book. Start with why. Second thing, I'm gonna tell you to read the book Atomic Habits. Third thing, I'm gonna tell you once you figured out what your why is, that's going to determine what exit strategy you're going to target, whether it's short-term rental, whether it's medium-term rental, whether it's co-living, whether it's long-term rental, whether it's multifamily, whether it's arbitrage. It could be any of those things, right? Um, you have to also then weigh out the risk, right? If you don't want a lot of risk, well, then I'm going to probably put you towards a long-term rental game, right? Which right now are really hard to pencil. But if you're like, you know what, I've got the capital, I'm ready to go, I've learned a lot, I feel confident in this, I'm going to say, hey, look, doing a short-term rental is a good option. You just have to be diligent about what you're doing. I love, personally, one of my favorite things is a hybrid model where during the summers, you, especially in Indy with all the stuff that happens here, you run it as a short-term rental, and then over the winter you run it as a medium-term rental. And when you do stuff like that, that's a nice little payout because you can, again, get those higher rates for those time. Because, again, we have the Indianapolis 500, literally the largest race in the world, largest sporting event in the world, actually. 300,000 plus people in one place in Speedway, Indiana, right? Just west of downtown Indy. And actually, that's not even the number one rental for Indianapolis. The number one thing that brings people to Indianapolis, that brings revenue to Indy, is actually Comic-Con. So again, if you rent out during those times and then in the meantime set up those connections to other people to get into hospitals, getting into nursing groups, any of those, now you've got a business that is modeled around getting multiple streams going, right? Then you're getting more connections, right? And guess what? Let's say a travel nurse calls you in the middle of that time. You're like, oh gosh, I don't have a spot for them. Well, reach out to one of us and say, hey, guess what? I got a spot open. And guess what? We'll pay you for that. We'll say, hey, thank you for sending us that person. And guess what? Here's a little fee of a thank you for getting them to us. And so it's another way to make a little extra cash on the side, right? And I'm a firm believer in that because then it fills up my place. Your place is already filled up. And then again, we can continue to go forward. So that's all about helping people, right? So I think if you want to be as cautious as possible, right? Long-term rental is the way to go, right? Um, that's the easiest way. If you can run the numbers and make that work, it, you know what? That's the way to go. If you want to make the most money, short-term rentals are the way to go. But there's a lot more risk involved, and there's a lot more work involved too, especially if you self-manage, which again, if you build systems, it's really not that bad, right? I manage my property in Kentucky from here, and I spend a total of maybe, I would say on a really busy week, an hour at the most. That's it, right? Other than that, don't touch it because I've got my system set up, right? Medium term rental takes a lot of work specifically because you're building relationships, right? You're calling people all the time to try to build those relationships, to have leads coming to you to say, hey, I need a property to stay in. I need a property to stay in. I need a property to stay in, right? So again, there's a lot of diligence in any of these long-term rentals. You still have to at least post it, right? But if you're going to get in the medium term and short-term game, you got to be ready to work. You got to be ready to grind a little bit. It is not going to be I'm going to post it and it's people are just going to come. You'll get some, right? What's the phrase? Even a blind squirrel can find a nut every once in a while, right? You'll get some, but if you want to be the top tier, you got to put effort into it. And again, prepare as if Airbnb is going out of business, right? If you prepare like that, then if they do, or if they change all of their stuff, let's say again, everybody is like, oh, it's so great, I just throw it on there. But let's say they start charging 20%, right, for an OTA fee, which is very possible. All of a sudden, your numbers don't work, right? And then that's not including maybe paying for a property manager or a co-host, right? That's just paying for the listing. So you got to find multiple models that work. And again, if you build out your own business, that's going to be a really important way to do it.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a good one. We really appreciate all the knowledge you've been, pouring out, and I've learned from it. And
Good.
yeah, I'm gonna consider some of the stuff you've strategies that you've explained in details to us. I want to thank you for coming here today. I mean, it's really an honor for you. We told you about a week or 2 weeks ago. I mean, it's barely a short notice, but the fact that you created the time, we really appreciate that, and I'm sure our audience, they also appreciate this. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Ahmed.
Yep.
What do you say? Because Court is very very interesting person. I mean, the first time I met you, you are just real like this. You like to teach. I can tell that, and you like to connect people together. So I see that energy in you, and someone like you, the sky is already the limit. That's a fact. Even if you're not, even let's say you just want to start today, the kind of energy you have, it's gonna attract that goodwill, attract people to you. So keep it up. Ahmed, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to thank you, for coming. We really appreciate this. I'm 100% sure that our audience, they love this as well. But before we let you go, we would like to know, you mentioned something about helping people to invest earlier on. Can you tell us a little bit about TC Home and Bon Voyage Renters? What do you do, and how can people reach you?
So TC Homes, what it is essentially we bring on people, and we'll say it this way: we take on capital investors, so people who want to bring money to a deal but don't necessarily want to go and specifically invest themselves and do the work. Right? They just want to collect the check at the end of the day and let other people manage it and find the deal. They don't want to do any of that stuff. And with our group, essentially, you can invest to then sit back, relax, and let us take care of it. And you still get a payout for it, which is really nice. So you can always reach us. So my Instagram is curtis.bonner. It's KURTIS.bonner, BONNER. You can definitely reach me there. Now, I'm not as on top of it like you guys are with your Instagram. I'm gonna have to step up my game. Um, for maybe we'll start another podcast too. I don't know. We'll see how wild I'm feeling. Um, but you can reach out to me there. You can also find me on Facebook at Kurt Bonner as well. So you can reach me at either one of those places for TC Homes, for Bon Voyage Rentals, and for SE Properties. What we do is co-hosting. So people that maybe have a property, or maybe they're looking at getting a property and they want to arbitrage, they can reach out to us as well. And if they reach out to us, again, same ways at KURTIS.BONNER on Instagram. If you reach out to me through there, you can ask me to look into co-hosting. And again, the way I do it is I set up, we'll go in and we'll design it. We'll do the full setup. We'll do all the purchasing, all that stuff. You bring essentially the money to the deal and we'll do the rest. Right. And that way you can get some of that real estate feeling, right? You get all the same benefits of real estate, but maybe you just want to learn it a little bit, and you do use that as a way to learn it. So it's a great option, I think, for people to come in who have never done it before, but also to kind of learn along the process.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Ibrahim, we've come to the top of an hour here. If people want to reach out to you and seek your service, how can they do that, and what kind of service can they reach you on for?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. It's very easy. I mean, just go to IB Realtors on Instagram. You can DM me anything concerning real estate. I can help you purchase, sell property, and you want to invest, just, DM me. Or you can call my number, 317-728-0213. I'm a realtor, so I'm a public person. So just go ahead and contact me. Ahmed, it's your time. How can people reach out to you, and what do you do particularly?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything real estate, off market deals, creative financing. But i- if you have a property that you want us to help you manage, I have a business, a sale property that manage property. We literally just started, but we have like 4 property under our belt already. So the coolest thing that you get from us is that you get that personalized experience, and you get to I don't want to say be in the driver's seat, because I don't want to put out a false information, but you will have you know the confidence that the person running it for you is actually um, their vision align
Competence.
with yours. So that is what we do. We have a lot of people reaching out to us and thanking us for this type of services that we provide. So if you need a management service, please reach out to us. My Instagram is the easiest, which is official Hammed Lawal. Or you can also call my business line, 762-240-7932. All right. Thank you guys. It's been I honestly called I honestly enjoy everything that you share with us. I learn a lot. If I can say that I learn a lot, imagine how much our audience learn from you. So thank you for your time. We really, really appreciate it. We can't wait to bring you back. We would like to dive into all these topic that you went over very quickly, so that we can dive deep into them and
Mhm.
ask all sort of question. Our audience didn't ask any question today, so we call it a day. Ibrahim, any other thing to add before we?
No, thank you. I just want to thank Court. We really appreciate you. Thank you for coming.
All
Absolutely.
right.
Hey, thank you guys so much for hosting me.
Thank you.